Who was there last week? Oh, let me check. Master Marina, were you here last week?
No, sir, I was not here last week, sir.
Lima November, Patrick.
With you, sir.
Yeah, I'm with you too.
I was not here. I was not here last week, sir. We don't have light.
Oh God. Okay.
There was no light at all run, so we are in COC class. So.
Me too. I was not here last week. Oh, I was not here last week.
There you go. Oh, who was not here last week? but yeah, it is fine. Last week we dealt. I'm just gonna share my screen now. Today I will not be the one taking the lecture. It will be Captain Tango, and it was the one that taught us last week, and he really shared a lot of insights on the MLC, and he took us to section 1 of the MLC. I think Captain Tango is already in the building, so he has a lot loaded. I don't want to start taking his time, or else he might keep us till 10 p.m. with his lovely lectures. I'll just call on it. Captain Tolu, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Captain Flavio, good evening.
Good evening, sir. We are always very, very grateful to have you. I was just about to go on recap of what we learned last week, but I didn't know you have loaded again for us this week. So I think we'll just kickstart with that, sir, if you are ready.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We'll go straight to business. It's nice to be back. Okay. Last week we started with Title 1 of MLC, and I don't know, is anybody here to help us with what's the first?
Yeah, I think he's having a network issue. I think what he's trying to ask, is there anybody here that was here last week that can help us with what we talked about in last week?
Okay, so sir, I think I was here for the later part of the lecture, and I think I was talking about the marine labor convention being for the mariners themselves, not for the owners of the ship, not for the authorities, but for the conventions are really meant to have a kind of safe environment, a kind of health conscious, and just in a word, how mariners can go and come safely. And one of the things I learned was that he made mention of is there's a particular age whereby there's a particular part of the convention that specifies the age limit, that if you're not 18, if you're not 16, you can't be on board. And if you're not 18, you can't do night shift. I think I learned that. And also there was this part he was mentioning about shifts, that there's a particular work hours limit that you have to observe. They're all part of marine labor convention. I think I got those parts out.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir. We might be having network issues today.
sorry. I think my network seems to be fluctuating. I can please just maybe just take over the class from there. Okay.
Yeah.
Sheep, I hope you all remember. And we talked.
Sorry, I think I will have to just take over the class today. But yeah, Oluwadamilare, you mentioned very good valuable points there. But I would say it's not enough for us to just know that there's a minimum hours of work and rest, which is what is called. Is there anybody in the class that can tell me the minimum hours of work and rest? And that's an exam question. And my call names, Master Marina. Master Marina, let's know what's the minimum hours of work and rest that we were discussing last week.
Good evening, sir. Normal work hours for a seafarer should be not less than 12 hours a day and 70 hours in a week.
Is it? Can someone else help us? Patrick, BJB, minimum hours of work and rest.
Which is
Yeah, we choose to. What's the minimum hours of work and rest?
minimum hours of work and rest.
That's correct.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello, I can hear you.
I think from my own understanding, minimum hours of work and rest is maximum of 12 hours and minimum of 8 hours rest.
I think we might need to go back to last week to do a lot of recap on it. Like I said, knowing the hours is not enough. Is anybody here to help us?
Let me try. For work,
Yeah,
maximum hours of work, no more than 14 hours in any 24-hour period, and not more than 72 hours in any 7-day period. Then for rest, at least 10 hours of rest in any 24-hour period, and 77 hours of rest in any 7-day period.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is that Lima November?
Yes.
Thanks a lot. I will catch up. How are you doing? How is shoots?
Fine, all well and good.
All right. That's good. So, guys, we can hear it from there. That's the hours of work and rest that I really like us to be quoting, which is minimum hours of work and rest. The one she has just mentioned is for the normal, but they are the ones between the 16 and 18. There, I will move on to. Yeah, Master Marina, go ahead.
Sorry, sir. When she was talking, my network went off. Can she just recap the hours for us again, please?
Okay, Lima November, help us.
Okay, for work, not more than 14 hours in any 24-hour period, not more than 72 hours in any 7-day period. Then minimum hours of rest, that's maximum hours of work. Then minimum hours of rest, at least 10 hours of rest in any 24-hour period and at least 77 hours of rest in any 7-day period.
Thank you very much. I got that.
Can you say it out to us, please?
Saimimi.
Yeah.
Okay. According to Lima November, she said maximum hour of work in a day should be 14 hours. And then the minimum hours of sleep should be not less than 10 hours in a day. And then for a 7-day working period, it should be not less than 70 hours of rest.
Not less than 70 hours of rest. But yeah, you've gotten it. But I would just say instead of day, we call it 24 hours. Is that correct? So daily hours of not less than, daily rest hours of not less than 10 hours in every 24 hours period. All right. Now going further, you have to also say it must not be divided into more than 2 periods. Are you following me? So your 10 hours that you have in that 24 hours must not be divided into more than 2 periods. And this is very important as well. And each period, must not be, less than 14 hours in between. And also, one must be at least a 6 hours rest. I know, yes, this is a lot of information to take in, but it's really the full picture of how your hours of work and rest should be stated. So our hours of work and rest for daily, the daily should be a daily rest hours of not less than 10 hours, not every day, in less than 24 hours. In less than 24 hours, and there are reasons why it's 24 hours and it's not still daily. And it must not be divided into more than 2 periods. An interval between each period must not be less than 14 hours. And if you divide it, even though you divide it to 2, at least one of it must not be less than 6 hours. You understand what I'm saying? Then, of course, thanks to Lima November, weekly rest must be at least 77 hours in every 7-day period. 77 hours in every 7-day period as well. Now, we can come back to that, which will be in the orals prep when we go down to that. But I need to stress out this fact that last week we were speaking about the MLC having 5 titles. MLC is having 5 titles. The first title, which we dealt last week, was the minimum requirements. We spoke about minimum requirements. That was the first title of the MLC convention. And under the minimum requirement, thanks to Capt Tolu, he made mention of 4 sections under the Title 1, and which is 1, minimum age. So the first thing MLC convention looks at is 1, the minimum age under the minimum requirements. What's the minimum age to go on board? Is there anybody there who can help me? Yeah, older.
I think it's 16 years.
16 years to go on board. When you go on board as a 16 years, what will you be regarded as?
I have no idea right now.
Yeah, you'll be regarded as what we call a young person. You'll be regarded as a young person, and a young person will be having a different hours of work and rest. We're having a different hours of work and rest. And I'm just going to quickly state that hours of work and rest, because they are going to be asking you, especially if you are the officer and your cadet is less than 16 years old, Is less than 18 years old, sorry, less than 18 years old, and is older than 16 or is 16. Minimum hours of work arrest for young person with minimum of 12 hours in every 24 hours, very important, and a minimum of 2 days in every week. And for a job of 4.5 hours, there must be a 30 minutes rest to be observed. So for young persons, like I said, young persons are between 16 and 18. Young persons are between 16 and 18. They must have additional, do I say additional or I say a different hours of work and rest, a different hours of work and rest of 12 hours in every 24 hours, minimum of 2 days in every week. And for a job of 30 minutes, they must, 4 hours, 30 minutes, they must have a 30 minutes rest. Capt Tolu has just hinted me that his network is fine and it will be taking over now. Capt Tolu, are you there?
Yes, Captain Falabi, good evening once again. Okay, thank you for that. Sincere apologies to everyone for the network. Okay, I just gave a recap earlier on the regulations as per Title 1, Regulation 1.1, which is minimum age, 1.2, medical certificates, 1.3, training and qualification, and 1.4, which is your recruitment and placement. So I will go into we're going to the Title 2. MLC has 5 titles. I will go into Title 2, and the Title 2 is the condition of work, condition of employment. Sorry about that. Title 2 is condition of employment, and this is one of the key aspects for we seafarers, every one of us, officers, and even the guys that are in the process of becoming officers, to really understand, because this is the aspect that contains your sea employment agreement, which most of us refer to as your contract. Okay, so briefly, I will just hint you about what the MLC says about Title 2, the condition of employment. And just for your information, it's broken down into 8 regulations. 8 regulations. That's 2.1, which is your Seafarers Employment Agreement. Your 2.2, Regulation 2.2, which is your wages. 2.3, hours of rest and work. 2.4, your entitlement to leave. 2.5, repatriation. 2.6, seafarers compensation for ship loss or funding. Then 2.7, which is the manning. And 2.8 is career and skill development. So for that, I would share my screen now so you can go through this with me, and we can go through the process together. So I will be doing that now. Okay, Captain Afolabi, please, can you confirm you can see my screen?
You can see your screen.
Okay, so 2.1, like I said, is a Seafarers Employment Agreement, and what this says, remember, this applies mostly to member states, and a vessel flying a flag of a member state who is in a port of a state that is not a member state, you still have to comply as long as your vessel is flying a flag of a member state of the MLC. So briefly, I need you all to understand one thing. You might be asked in your exam about the content of a sea employment agreement. You understand? And when you ask this, you need to answer professionally. You need to answer professionally. Sorry, I have to say this, but some of the questions Captain Afolabi asked some of you a few minutes ago did not show that some of you are actually prepared or go through some of these things after the class. Because if you go through, you understand some wordings that you to use as officers or someone that has an understanding of MLC. For instance, when you talk about ages between 16 and less than 18, you refer to them as a young person. And the way some of you answered the question about hours of rest and hours of work it's not really going to impress a surveyor. For instance, if I were to be a surveyor, I wouldn't be impressed with some of the answers, except I think, is it Mike Lima, or sorry if I didn't get that name well. I think your answer was quite impressive, but you omitted some parts. So that's just by the way. I just need you guys to please take more time, go through most of all this, you understand, after the classes. So MLC Regulation 2. Title 2, like I said, is the condition of employment, and I will just go straight to the key points in all this. So now remember that seafarers working on a ship, okay, you are required to have a sea employment agreement, and your sea employment agreement, which we refer to as contract paper or C, must be signed by both the seafarer, the ship owner, or the representative of the ship owner. You need to note that your contract paper has to be signed by you, the ship owner, or his representative. Another thing you need to know is your seafarer is that when signing or prior to your signing of your contract, you have to, as per MLC, you have the right to examine your sea employment agreement. What does that mean? That means you should be given adequate time to go through your employment agreement, understand it, seek advice, and understand your rights and your responsibility before signing. Another thing you need to know about sea employment agreements, okay, your contract, is that the ship owner and the seafarer has to have a signed original of this. Okay, you have to have a signed original with you and the ship owner. But in certain cases, certain exemptions or certain conditions are given. For instance, let's say your contract expires when you are at sea. You understand? So in that kind of situations, you can be sent, most times we have this contract paper sent via email and stuff like that. Or maybe you're going to join in another country and your ship owner or your manning agency is another country. So in such situations, you can sign and send to them digitally and they send you another copy. You understand? But you have to print and have this with you. So you need to also understand that in certain parts of your contract, okay, okay, there are certain conditions of employment that can easily be obtained on board by seafarer, including shipmaster, and such information, including a copy of sea employment agreement, is also accessible for review. So what is this saying? Your sea employment contract agreement should be accessible for review by officers of competent authority, including those in ports to be visited. So when you have a port state or a flag state visiting your vessel, okay, they should have access to your sea employment agreement. So you have an MLC auditor, inspector coming on board, okay, they have all right to go to your sea employment agreement. Another thing you need to know is that you as a seafarer should be given a document containing your record of employment, okay, containing a record of their employment. Then the two is a collective bargaining agreement. Collective bargaining agreement, for some of you, it's like it's an agreement, for instance, where a ship owner, has an agreement with the union, for instance, you understand, where union comes into place in most cases with the ship owner and the employee, you understand. So in some cases, some vessels, you have a collective bargaining agreement in addition to your sea employment agreement, and in certain cases, some are actually integrated. But what MLC says here is that when you have this situation, you have a collective agreement, a bargaining agreement created with your seafarers employment agreement. It talks about the language, okay, that it can be in, okay, where the language of seafarer and when the language of a seafarer's employment agreement is not in English, okay, it says a copy shall be available in English except for a ship engaged only in domestic voyages. So I need you guys to understand the key things I've said in this aspect about your sea employment agreement. Remember, it has to be what? You have to have the original copy on board. You have to have time to vet and review and ask questions about it. It has to be signed by you. It has to be signed by your ship owner of the representative. Okay. where it's not written in English, okay, certain part of it shall also be what's available in English, except for vessel in a domestic voyage. So another thing you need to understand about sea employment agreements, I'll just go straight to the key point, and you might be asked in an exam, okay, what are the contents or what is contained in your sea employment agreement? These are the answers you should actually give. Okay, your seafarer's name, date of birth, age, birthplace, the ship owner's name and address, the place and date where the agreement was entered into, the capacity in which the seafarer is employed, the amount of the seafarer's wages, okay, the amount to be paid for leave. It should also contain clauses in terms of termination of contracts, okay, it should contain information about health and social security protection benefits, seafarer's entitlement to repatriation, okay, references to collective bargaining agreement. Like I said, if there's a collective agreement bargaining, maybe there's a bargaining with the union and the employee, the ship owner, okay, there should be a section that could be referenced in your sea employment agreement, and any other particulars which national law may require. So these are the things you have to tell a surveyor when it talks about the content of a sea employment agreement. But you need to understand that when you're answering this question, you have to answer it with a very good level of competency. Not just tell the surveyor it contains my name, then the place they born me, my age, okay, my salary. You answer it in a professional way. Shipowner's name and address, my details as a seafarer, which includes my name, my date of birth, place of birth. It should contain the location or place at which the agreement is signed, okay, and entered into force. You answer with some very good level of, professionalism when answering a surveyor. Then things like your repatriation, conditions for repatriation, your health and social security, you understand, and conditions for termination of contracts. So I'm just going straight to the key points because we have a lot to cover in a short while. So another aspect is the record of employment. You as a seafarer, okay, you're meant to have a record of your employment, okay, as per MLC and as per what the convention says generally, and it should be in English or translated in English. Another thing you should also take notes about your employment agreement is the wages, which is brings us to the regulation 2.2. Okay, all seafarers shall be paid for their work regularly and in accordance with their employment agreement. So what does this mean? You shall be paid for your work. It means there's no free job on a ship. As long as you work on a ship, you have to be paid for your employment, and this has to be in accordance with your employment agreement. And I need you to understand something. For those of us that mostly go on a ship without employment agreement, and you feel maybe because of you've been looking for a job for a while and stuff, so I need to start understanding after this class that it is a very bad practice, because your sea employment agreement after this class, you will understand, covers a lot of things. It's like your life insurance on that vessel, your life insurance when working with that ship owner or recruitment agency. If anything goes wrong, anything goes right, or anything, it all has to be referenced in your employment agreement. And I will cite an example later, maybe at the end of the class, to reason why you have to. So back to the class, wages. MLC talks about your wages, and it's expected that in your employment agreement, your wages, the mode of payment of your wages, your rates, the currency, the period you should be paid is indicated in your contract. So if your contract, you have to go through your contract. Contract says you have to be paid monthly. That's to tell you the currency at which you'll be paid and the rate at which you should be paid, and any, we'll get to that answer, but any deduction or addition or anything, including even the way, the mode at which you'll be paid, if it's by cash, for instance, or bank transfer to your account or to your family's account or something. So all this has to be indicated in your what? sea employment agreement. So whenever you pick an agreement, you have to check and see the section for the wages, and you have to understand what, mode of payment, even including the rate of exchange rate, you understand? So it has to be covered in your sea employment agreement. So please you take note of this when and before you sign any agreement. So for purpose of this guideline, the terms, you can go through these terms. These are key terms under MLC. That's what able seafarer, basic pay or wages, consolidated wages, hours of work, overtime. You need to go through this and understand what it talks about. But I need to understand something, and you have to be very careful when a surveyor asks you this question. The surveyor can ask you hours of work as per MLC, and can ask you hours of rest. There are two different things. Hours of work and hours of rest are two different things. So you need to be careful not to fall into that trap, because most of us, or some of us, has the attitude of when responding to a question, the surveyor just asks you, what is hours of work? And your mind the next thing you hear is only hours. And once you've asked hours, you start answering him hours of rest as against hours of work. It's two different things. So we're going to get to that aspect, and we're going to understand that. But this, you need just go through at your leisure time in terms of calculation and payment for seafarers. Remuneration includes separate compensation for overtime. This is just an explanation about that. For purpose of this class, we won't be able to go through one by one, but you should understand that as per your sea employment agreement, details of your wages, which includes your wages, your overtime, your travel, everything has to be covered in your what? It has to be covered in your sea employment agreement. Okay, so that's that about the aspect. And I'll take us quickly past wages, minimum wages. You can go through minimum wages. I'll take us quickly to the very key part, which is the hours of work and hours of rest, which is what? The regulation 2.3. Regulation 2.3 is the hours of work and hours of rest. And what does this say? Now, take it to one key part. Hours of work means time during which seafarers are required to do work on account of the ship. Okay, that's the time you have to work on account of the ship job. When you have to work, your duty time on the ship. And hours of rest means time outside hours of work. The term does not include short break. So you need to understand that when you're on a short break, your coffee break and whatever name we give it, it's not hours of rest. That's just a short break in between work hours. It's not your hours of rest. So now we'll go to what? The hours of work and hours of rest, which I believe we've talked about this, but for those of you that want to take notes, you can just take note of this. Okay, hours of work, 14 hours in a 24 hours period. Please remember, MLC says 24 hours period. MLC did not say in a day. So for those of us that are fond of using the word 14 hours in a day, 14 hours in a week, MLC doesn't use a day and MLC doesn't use a week. Okay, and why does it use 24 hours period and everything? Because all country, they're all different. MLC, remember, it's not just for Africa or maybe the United Kingdom. It's also covered in all member states. All member states could be Asia, could be Europe, could be Africa, could be Australia, anywhere. So it's covered. And so you need to understand that when you're talking about, you're not saying a day, you're talking about 24 hours and you're talking about 7-day period. So talking about hours of work of 14 hours in 24-hour period and 72 hours in any 7-day period. That's for your work as the maximum. And for rest, it's minimum. Why did they use the word minimum for rest? It means you can be fortunate to get a job that you have more period, but it says this should be the minimum as per MLC. 10 hours in any 24 hours period, 77 hours in any 7-day period. And remember, your hours of rest, if are divided into, should not be divided into more than 2 periods, of which one shall be at least 6 hours in length. So what says when your hours of rest is divided into 2, for those of you that do, let's say, 6 hours shift of 4 hours, it means one of the 2 rest hour periods should be at least 6 hours straight up. One must be at least 6 hours. Then the period of work should not exceed what? 14 hours. So what does this mean? It says if you work, let's say, from 0000 to 0600 hours, you've done a 6-hour work, then you have a 6-hour rest, which is from the 0600 to what? To 1200 hours. Then the work should not exceed 14 hours. You get? So when you, after that 1200, it's not telling you that the work period after that should not what? Should not exceed 14 hours. You get? So now remember, there's always 1 or 2 exemptions to all this, but it's not really an exemption. It's just a situation of, for instance, let's say an emergency. For those of us that always like, when it's time for emergencies or anything, you say, this is my rest hour. Remember, this it's in all working condition. Whenever you have an emergency, you don't quote MLC. An emergency is an emergency. After emergency is being treated, then you can get back to MLC, and the master would adjust for ways to compensate anyone that has done work beyond his or her work hours. So another thing you need to understand is muster, firefighting, lifeboat drills prescribed as per national law and regulation and by international instrument shall be conducted in a manner that minimizes the disturbance of rest period and does not induce fatigue. Another aspect is we that are fond of saying, well, they are found they're conducting drills during my rest hour, conducting drills during my rest hour. You need to go through MLC before the next time you say any of such. And what MLC says is that MLC recognizes the fact that you have to carry out a lifeboat, you have to carry out a drill, and this drill might affect somebody's rest hour. So what is MLC saying? It's saying even if it's going to affect the person's rest hour, it must, as far as possible, minimize disturbance of that rest period and does not induce fatigue. So you can decide as a master that, okay, you want to run the drills in such a way that at least everybody for the 24-hour period has its complete 6 hours rest untampered with. So you can say, okay, fine, out of the, if your rest hour is divided into 2, you can say, okay, from the hours of 0000, that's midnight, 00 till let's say 0600, you won't conduct any drill or anything at that night hour, you understand? So that at least you know that whoever is off duty that time is properly rested. Then you now say, okay, from the 06 to the next 1200, you're also not conducting you're not conducting any other drill. So you're making sure that the 2 sets of people who are running maybe back to back in terms of duty, for instance, on the bridge, has their good 6 hours rest. Then you now adjust with any other aspects. So all this is at the discretion of the master, chief officer, whoever has been assigned to such duty. But you have to remember that it must minimize disturbance of rest period and does not induce fatigue to any crew. When a seafarer is on call, such as when a machinery space is okay, let me take that again. When the seafarer is on call, such as when the machinery space is unattended, the seafarer shall have an adequate compensationary rest period if the normal period of rest is disturbed by call out to work. Like I said earlier, in some cases, you might be called out, okay, for a job, for an emergency, for a drill or something. You might be called out. So it's at the discretion of the master or the head of department or whoever is in charge of the arrangement of the hours of rest, you know, to create a compensation, to compensate you for that period of your rest, which has been breached. Maybe 1 hour of your rest period, you were called to assist the engineers to do a particular job because the engineer needs more hands. Okay, the chief engineer with the master can argue and say, okay, fine, for your guys that are called out for this period, okay, we can give them an additional 2 hours rest. We get to compensate them for that period, so it doesn't breach the MLC. So that's just that about the MLC. I remember, like Captain Tolu said earlier, hours of rest is very important, and hours of rest that we just finished talking about is for a person above ages 18 and above. For a person below the ages of 18 and 16 and above, which we classify as a young person, there's a separate hours of rest and hours of work for such person, which you've all discussed them earlier. So another aspect you need to know, and if you guys notice, you read your mess room, you see something called shipboard working arrangements, you see duty hours and everything. MLC mandates that you have a schedule, okay, for working arrangements for vessel while at sea and while in port, because we understand that different vessels with different kind of operation and different kind of tasks. Some vessels, when you're at sea, the work reduces a little compared to when at port. And for certain vessels, when at sea, it's when you really do the job. You know, the job is really, you understand me, ethic than when in port. And for certain also some kind of vessels, it goes in both ways. While at sea and while at port, you're so busy. So you have to draw a shipboard working arrangement, a schedule, you understand? For the officers, your ratings, everybody on board the vessel, you understand, is working on the vessel for work arrangements in port and at sea. And remember, it has to be in English, translated in English. And it said earlier, except the vessel just working within the coasts. So we just, okay, this is the young person talked about below the ages of 18 and above 16 and above, okay? So you just take note of that too. Then, okay, then remember something. For a young person, it's very important. You might be asked that, when can a young person, okay, let me just give it to you the way it's written here. Is there exemption? So there are certain exemptions for young person hours of rest. And such exemption is, for instance, when, okay, they are impracticable for a young person in deck, engine room, and catering assigned to watchkeeping duties or the effectiveness training of young person. So certain exemption goes, for instance, for a young person, and that exemption is when, for purpose of their training or purpose of maybe training them on watchkeeping duties or training them on for their program as per maybe their maybe cadet training log and stuff like that. Certain exemptions might apply. For instance, like we said earlier, a young person should not keep a night watch, but for training purpose, you can bring this person up, okay, to have a feel of what the night watch is, but not as the watchkeeper. He's assisting the watchkeeper, is getting familiar, is undergoing training. But remember that the whole purpose of all this, bringing him up during that period, is not to keep watch or to relieve you of your duty, but just for training of such person, okay, and to get familiar with his job. And in the case of an emergency, when you need an emergency, then this young person can go out of the hours of work and hours of rest, or certain aspect of this MLC might be overlooked. Remember, just for training purpose. So if you are being asked such question, remember, for training purpose, okay, or in an emergency. So now we'll go to regulation 2.4. So it talks about entitlement to leave. And what MLC says generally about entitlement to leave is that as if we are all entitled to leave, and it has to be stated in our sea employment agreement. And it explains a minimum, okay, a minimum entitlement in terms of pay, and that's covered in these 2 points. That's subject to any collective agreement or law or regulations provided for an appropriate method of calculation that takes account of the special needs of seafarers in this respect. The annual leave, okay, with pay entitlement shall be calculated on basis of what? Of a minimum of 2.5 calendar day per month of employment. You have to remember this. So if you are asked about your entitlement to live under MLC, or you're asked by a surveyor that, okay, what does MLC require to be your pay when on leave? As per your sea employment agreement, you need to know it has to be a minimum of, calculation has to be on basis of minimum of 2.5 calendar day per month of employment. Okay, and the manner in which the length of service is calculated shall be determined by a competent authority or throughout the appropriate machinery in each country. Justified absence from work shall not be considered annually. And remember, another content of your sea employment agreement is what? It has to state your entitlement to leave. So all these things we're talking about is all the content of what? Your sea employment agreement, which you should have with you. So just take note of that. Then so there's no time to go through this. We can't go through everything one by one. That's why you have a manual, MLC convention manual also on board with you. So I will go straight to the next one, which is 2.5, which is what? Repatriation. And repatriation is very important because in repatriation, you should understand the clause in your contract paper that covers the repatriation. When can you be repatriated? Okay, and remember, when you talk about repatriation, repatriation is a seafarer's right, and it has to be what? At no cost to you as a seafarer. That's why it's called repatriation. It has to be at no cost to you as a seafarer, as long as the conditions are met as per the code. You understand? It has to be So briefly, I'll just explain this to you. Each member shall ensure that seafarer on ship that fly its flag are entitled to repatriation, which must also be stated in your sea employment agreement, remember, okay, in the following conditions. So you are entitled to repatriation, and this should be, of this should be stated if and understood by you. If, for instance, your employment agreement expires while you're abroad. So you signed, let's say, a 4-month employment agreement contract, 4-month contract, and it expires on you're abroad, you are entitled to repatriation. So what does that mean? If you don't want to extend your contract, as long as your contract has expired, you are entitled to repatriation at no cost to you. So be wherever the vessel is, you are entitled. And some companies, what they do is when your contract expires, okay, when you're abroad or you're at sea and they know they don't have a means of flying you back, which is stated, should have to be stated in your contract employment, they put some little incentives. They can say, okay, we'll be paying you half of your day rate in addition to your particular day rate till we're able to repatriate you back to your country or where you've agreed as per your contract papers to where you need to sign off for. The another clause for repatriation is when the seafarer's employment agreement is terminated, either by who, the ship owner, or by the seafarer. But for what? For justified reasons, for the seafarer. So you need to understand that you don't just wake up and say, oh, I'm terminating my contract, I'm no more working, and as per repatriation clause of my sea employment agreement, they need to fly me back home. From here, I'm in the middle of Atlantic, I say I'm no longer working and they need to fly me back home. No, it's not done like that for seafarers. You have to have a justified reason. Okay? Maybe your odds, well, forbid, maybe you lose somebody close to you, or psychologically you can't go further. You understand? And this has to be approved by the master. You understand? So if assess the situation, the master, and okay, it's decided, okay, fine, this guy has contract can be terminated based on so justified reasons. And remember, when the master is even doing that or sending such measure, mail to the office or request, he has to also consider is what save money, that it doesn't breach. But that's a topic for another day. So you just have to know that you can terminate your contract for justified reasons and you're entitled to repatriation. Another aspect is when the seafarer are no longer able to carry out their duty under their employment agreement or cannot be expected to carry them out in the specific circumstance. So when you assess the seafarer, for instance, as a master, you see he can no longer carry out his duty, maybe he's fatigued, he's going through some emotional trauma, maybe his wife left him or something, or his wife sent him a mail if he doesn't come home, she's ending the relationship, the marriage, and so you assess it and you see that, oh, this guy can't go any further. And this guy cannot carry out his job as per the employment agreement. Fine, he's entitled to repatriation. Remember, for justified reasons. So each member state shall ensure that the appropriate provisions in their law and regulations or other measures or in collective bargaining agreements prescribing the circumstances in which seafarers are entitled to repatriation. So contract 2 has to what? State it as per, you understand, the flag regulation or flag requirement, and the maximum duration of service period on board, following which a seafarer is entitled to repatriation. Such period to be less than 12 months. So what is it saying? Saying generally that depending based on if there's also a collective agreement, bargaining agreement, and member states, okay, should also pass to, for instance, ship owners and everything. Okay, some of these conditions, not some, all these conditions, okay, letting them understand that the maximum duration of period. Sorry about that. I don't know, my system is okay. Okay. Yeah, maximum duration of period of service. Maximum duration of service period on board, following which a seafarer is entitled to must not exceed 12 months. You have to remember that must not exceed 12 months. So you can just go through this repatriation, but remember the whole key things about this you need to know is that a section of your contract paper must contain the repatriation clause, and you need to understand the conditions at which you can be repatriated at no cost to you. So you need to understand this, go through this in your contract paper, and you have to go through all this before signing your contract paper. Time is fast spent, so I'll move a little faster so I can at least cover this. So that's repatriation. Then the other one we'll go to is 2.6, which is seafarers compensation, okay, for ship loss or foundering. What does this mean? This clause is just put there to ensure that seafarers are compensated when a ship is lost or has been foundered. Seafarers are entitled to adequate compensation in the case of injury, loss, or unemployment arising from ship loss or from foundering. So we go, sorry, I just moved that. Now, you need to understand that a section of your contract paper has to contain the details of your compensation. You understand? The compensation that will be given to you as a seafarer in case of what? A ship loss, or in case of injury to you, okay? Loss, unemployment arising from ship loss. For instance, your contract has not expired and okay, the ship loss. Some of you might be wondering, what do you understand by foundering? Foundering is a situation whereby a ship gets lost at sea, maybe you're going at sea, the ship gets sunk, like for one reason or another, there's a collision, water ingress, and complete loss of the ship, okay, or complete sinkage, damage to the ship. So, which is something maybe beyond your own control, you get. So when a ship is lost, sunk at sea, and anything, so you should a section of your contract paper should contain what? The compensation that should be given to you for the period at which there's a ship loss, or for the period at which there's an injury to you, or period arising for maybe your ship is aboard, and maybe if the ship owner for one reason has a particular, for instance, a law case, and maybe legally he lost the ship. Legally, maybe the ship is being arrested, detained legally for maybe the ship owner's fault. Maybe he got a pick a loan somewhere or something, unable to pay back, and they take over the ship. Remember, your contract must not expire during this period. So for that, it means there might be a period where you'll be unemployed, which you should be employed as per your contract. I don't know if you understand me. So there should be a compensation, and this should be covered what in your what sea employment agreement. So you need to understand this. Read this part of your contract paper. Okay, says if, for instance, you get injured at sea or during your work, how long is the complement to still pay you as per your contract? Let's say your injury, it's some kind of injury that they need to fly you out of the ship before the termination of your contract. You need to understand that, oh, how long? Okay, am I going to still receive my salary? So in case you don't get your salary, you know where to quote as per the regulation. Let's just go to calculation of indemnity against employment. The indemnity against unemployment resulting from ship foundering or loss should be paid for the days during which the seafarer remains, in fact, unemployed at the same rates as the wages payable under the employment agreement, but the total indemnity payable to any one seafarer may be limited to 2 months' wages. Yes, that's what MLC says. You need to go through your contract and make sure your contract is in compliance with MLC. Then that's 2.6, then 2.7, the manning level, which is important. And the reason for this is manning level to ensure that seafarers work on board ship with sufficient personnel for safe, effective, and secure operation. So MLC also understands the fact that your vessel has a minimum safe manning, and MLC also buttresses this aspect by stating that your vessel must be adequately manned. You understand? Okay, for the safety, efficiency, and safe operation of the vessel. Because when the vessel is not adequately manned, that is when you have crew working, for instance, a job for 4 people and you have just 2 crew, those crew are
Hello, I think I'm having an issue with Captain Tolu. So yeah, can anybody hear me? Is it just me?
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Yeah, Captain Tolu was just discussing about the manning levels before the network cut him out. And what he's just trying to explain to us there is, for every vessel there must be a minimum manning level, and the manning level for every vessel are being decided by the flag states, and that's why every ship above 500 GT must be issued with a safe manning document. For you to apply for the safe manning document, there are procedures, but you must be able to prove that the crew that you are manning the vessel with, the number of the crew are able to handle the operational emergency side and another sides of the vessel, but must have capacity to be able to operate the vessel safely and efficiently. And the last part for Title 2, which will be the last part to discuss about today, will be career and skill development and opportunities for seafarer employment. Career and skill development and opportunities for seafarer employment. So just like the names imply, MLC is also under the Title II, has also set out that companies should also have procedures. Companies should also have a methodology and strategy for career and skill development, and then to also gain opportunities for seafarers as well. I'm going to pause there, and next week we're going to be speaking on Title 3 and Title 4 of the MLC Convention. Let me summarize today's lecture. And today's lecture is more of the Title 2. And the reason why I'm kind of stressing this is because especially if we're doing our examination, especially if we're doing, it might even be in interviews, especially if we are even on board, we need to really get a full understanding of, what this MLC is about. And that's why I've tried to make sure that everybody taking us on the lecture tries to break it down for us. I'll start again with the Title 1. Title 1 is minimum requirements. So even before you think of going to the ship, minimum requirements is splitted into 4: minimum age, medical certificate, training and qualification, recruitment and placement. Today is the Title 2, which Captain Tolu has talked about, which is the conditions for employment. So first of all, meet the minimum requirement. Then let's talk about the condition of employment. Condition of employment, Capt Tolu has tried to let us know, are divided into 8 as well, 8 parts. Part 1 is the Seafarers Engagement Agreement. And when you're talking about Seafarers Engagement Agreement, it's more of the contents of your Seafarers Engagement Agreement, you understanding it as well. 2 is the wages, the wages being agreed on board. Wages being agreed, with your company. 3, hours of work and rest, which we've talked about today, and Capt Tolu has tried to let us know that, the hours of work and rest, we need to know our minimum hours of work and rest on board. We need to know how to fill it up properly, and as well, we need to know how to use the right terminology as well, so we don't mix it up. 4, entitlement to leave. 5, repatriation. Every seafarers have the right to be repatriated back to their home, from their home to ship, and ship back home at no cost to the seafarer. 6, seafarers compensation of ship lost and foundering. Capt Tolu has mentioned it. Then 7, which is the manning levels. Manning levels was where the network cut him off. I'll bring him back in to mention the last one, and then we'll call it a day. Capt Tolu, are you there?
Okay, good evening, everyone else again. Sorry, the network just cut me off. So just round it up quickly. I'll round it up quickly. And I was on 2.7. Yeah, that's manning level. Okay, the vessel has to be adequately manned. Okay, to ensure what safe, effective, and secure operation of the ship. So MLC references this, and MLC is also past this. So it's a compliance. The member state has to comply, with the manning level, okay, stated as per the flag, minimum manning level, and ensure that the vessel is adequately manned. And the last on the list for the Title 2 is career and skill development and opportunities for seafarer employment. Like it says, career and skill development and opportunities for seafarers employment. So what does this mean? MLC brings in the fact that ship owners has to have a program in place to promote career and skill development, okay, and also for employment opportunities for seafarers. So every member state of MLC, okay, shall have a national policy to promote employment in the maritime sector and to encourage career and skill development and create employment opportunities for seafarers domiciled in their territory. So you need to understand these facts that this is covered under the MLC. And like it clearly says, career and skill development, which I believe is self-explanatory to all of us, but you need to just understand the fact that there should be a standard that should help seafarers, strengthen their competency, qualification, and employment opportunities. So even some companies, some ship owners, they go as far as sending seafarers for what? For training, providing career development programs for them, sponsoring some of their courses, okay, their STC courses and everything. So even some companies have, places for promotional opportunities, and they also put in place, a company should also put in place what? A program or a room, okay, to create what? Employment opportunities. You get employment opportunities. So you have to create employment opportunities. For instance, now a Nigerian flag vessel, okay, under NIMASA, which is also a member state, okay, should have, how would I put it? Should have a national policy in place, you understand, which would what? Bring in employment opportunities for Nigerian seafarers, for competent seafarers and stuff like that. And ship owners, seafarers organizations, and all of them should also steadily establish clear objectives for vocational guidance, education, training for seafarers whose duty on board should primarily relate to safe operations and navigation of the ship, including ongoing training. So training programs like cadet training programs, sending officers ratings for SCC training programs and stuff like that. So these are things that are covered, okay, and MLC also covers the measures, okay, that should be put in place to promote career and skill development, okay. And some of these measures is agreement providing for career development and skill training with ship owners and organizations, arranging for promoting employment through establishment and maintenance of registers of list, okay, then promotions of opportunities. Okay, promotion of opportunities both on board and ashore for further trainings and education of seafarers to provide for skills development and portable competencies in order to secure and retain deck work. Like I said, some companies do that, and MLC encourages that you have to do this as per regulation 2.8. You understand? For companies to put in place career development programs, training programs, and also what? Create employment opportunities for seafarers. Okay, and should also have registers of seafarers, that's as per the flag states. So that is just basically what you should understand about the Title 2 of MLC. Just a brief recap. We've covered Title 1, which talks about the minimum requirement for seafarers to work on ship. And Title 2 we cover today is the condition of employment, okay, which Captain Afolabi has explained, broken it down into the regulations under Title 2, which is 8 regulations. So I believe by now, if we are being asked, what are the contents of your sea employment agreement, you should be able to answer. You should be able to answer a surveyor with at least 10 points based on what we've talked about now. You should be able to answer the surveyor comfortably and tell him should contain this, should contain. And you as an officer to be or officers already should also understand what you should check when you're signing a sea employment agreement. Don't just pick, sign, and submit. Do not just pick, sign, and submit. There are so many clauses, I tell you, that are in some contracts that are not in compliance to MLC. Even some of the ship owners, some of the shipping agents do not even know this. I've seen a contract that clearly states if a vessel goes off, off contract or something, okay, the crew might be required to disembark the vessel immediately, and their salary stops immediately they are told to disembark. But you and I can clearly understand now that when you see such contracts, you know it is wrong, because the regulation 2.6 that talks about seafarers compensation for loss or funding of vessel, okay, also talks about the minimum at least you still pay a seafarer. So if, for instance, now vessel, you signed a contract and for one reason or the other, the ship owner gets in debt or something and just tells you guys, disembark my vessel, you should know that it's wrong as per a certain regulation. And it's good you not just know it's wrong based on what you see. It's good you know how to reference this. So that's how I encourage us now, after this class, before the next class, to please and please go through the MLC convention. Again, we've covered 1 and 2. We have Title 3, which is accommodation, recreation, food, and catering. Those ones are something we can cover in few minutes. We have Title 4, health protection, Medicare, welfare. We have Title 5, compliance and enforcement. These ones are things we can cover up in 1 hour. But the Sea Employment Agreement, which is majorly Title 2, is the very key part of MLC that we need to understand, because that is where everything about you is covered. Everything about your contract, your going on board is covered. So at this point, I will call it a day till the next class. And sincere apologies for the network and the break in communication. So I'll hand over to Captain Afolabi. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Captain Tolu. That was well explained. To be honest, I had to even keep writing, and I learned a lot. Thanks for explaining the title too. I'm sure not only for exam purpose, not only for professional purpose, but also for our own side as well. We now fully understand what it entails and how important 1 hours of work and rest, 2 safe manning, 3 the our contract. Please let's go and be reading it. It's not just how much am I being paid and let's sign. But yeah, thanks. Like I said, next week we'll go breaking down the title 3 of MLC, which talks about accommodation. And this is a passionate one for me myself. Accommodation, recreational facilities, food and catering, because I fell short of enjoying this at the early start of my career till I was able to understand this as well. Title 4 will be health protection, so we might do Title 3 and 4 next week, and then we will round up with Title 5, which is the last part, and it's a very important part, which is compliance. Captain Tolu, thank you very, very much. We can't thank you enough. Is anybody having any question tonight or you would like to ask tomorrow? I also need to say that please be taking notes at the end of this series, just like we've always done. We will also have, shall I say, an oral section, or shall I say, a quiz section, where we'll be asked questions based on MLC, and then we'll try to get the knowledge impacted to the students as well. Like I said, does anybody have any question tonight? Okay, I'll take that as a no. I think Captain Tolu has stressed it that we should please go back and try and read on this MLC. If not for anything, if we are on board or our last contract that we signed on our last vessel, it's worth just having a read, a look at it. What does it entails? And trust me, it will be a very good read, and you will really get more, because like I said, I was surprised when I was asked the same question during my chief mates. What does your Seafarers engagement agreement contain? But yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, Captain Tolu, and thanks, Bishop. Captain Joshua, I think it's just left now. Well, thank you, and see you next week, Tuesday.
Thank you, everyone. See you. Bye.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right.